Today, we are unlocking the gates to a place that was, for a solid 500 years, probably the most exclusive address on the entire planet. I mean, this was the heart of an empire, a grand stage for incredible power, and it was completely, totally forbidden to the outside world. So let's pull back the curtain and explore the secrets held within its walls.
Right, and this is the big mystery, isn't it? For centuries, the Forbidden City was just this black box, sitting right in the center of the Chinese universe. The lives of emperors, state secrets, all the court drama, it all happened behind these massive red walls. So what was really going on in there? To even begin to wrap our heads around this place, let's start with the sheer scale. Legend has it that the Forbidden City has 9,999 rooms. You might be wondering, why not a nice round 10,000? Well, because only the Jade Emperor in heaven was worthy of a palace that large. That one little detail tells you everything. This was a place built to be as close to divine as humanly possible.
Okay, so before we actually step inside, let's get our bearings. Let's really understand what this monumental place was all about.
You know, it's so important to get this dual role. This wasn't just some ridiculously lavish home for one family, no. It was the absolute nerve center of an empire of millions. Just think, every major political decision, every single decree that shaped the entire country came from right inside these walls.
And this chart, wow, it really puts its incredible lifespan into perspective. We're talking more than 500 years, through two of China's most powerful dynasties, the Ming and the Qing. This place was the unchanging center of a constantly changing world. And the fact that it's now been the Palace Museum for over a century means its story didn't end. It just opened up for all of us to see.
All right, let's start our tour where all the action happened. The most public, most imposing part of the city, the outer court. This was the empire's grand stage. Yeah, this was not a place for living, it was a place for ruling. Everything here, and I mean everything, was designed to project power, to totally awe visiting dignitaries, and to just hammer home the emperor's absolute authority over everyone and everything.
Now, what's really cool is how incredibly specialized these giant halls were. You have the Hall of Supreme Harmony, which was for the biggest of the big events, like a new emperor taking the throne. Then there's the Hall of Central Harmony, which was basically the rehearsal room for those huge events. And finally, the Hall of Preserving Harmony hosted massive banquets and even the final, nail-biting stage of the Imperial Civil Service exams. Every single act of power had its own dedicated theater.
So here's the key takeaway. The buildings themselves were sending a message. Those yellow roof tiles, that color was reserved only for the emperor. The entire city is aligned on this perfect north-south axis, literally positioning the emperor at the center of the known universe. It was basically architecture as propaganda. This contrast is just crucial for understanding the whole palace. So if the outer court was this public, masculine, and totally immense stage for the emperor's power, what happened when he stepped off that stage? Well, let's go find out. We're now passing from the world of public power into the private, residential world of the inner court. Okay, so imagine we're passing through the gate of heavenly purity. We're leaving that world of massive public ceremonies behind and entering the private quarters of the emperor and his family. The vibe is about to change completely. This was the real heart of the city. Forget those vast, intimidating plazas we just saw. Here, life happened in a network of smaller courtyards, quiet gardens, and private little palaces. This is where the emperor stopped being a symbol and actually became a person. You know, a son, a husband, a father. But don't go thinking this was a life of leisure. Oh no, the emperor's daily routine was incredibly demanding and super structured. He was up before dawn studying classical texts, then he'd meet with officials, spend hours reading reports. It was a relentless 24/7 job running a massive empire. And this quote, man, it just captures the incredible irony of the emperor's life perfectly. He was the most powerful person in the world, without a doubt, but he was also completely trapped. He could almost never leave the palace walls. It turns out, absolute power came with absolute isolation. And he was not alone in that golden cage. This chart shows this whole complex, sealed-off society that existed just to support him. Look at how tiny that slice for the imperial family is. The rest was made up of thousands of guards, officials, court ladies, and eunuchs. These were castrated male servants who could actually rise to positions of immense power. This wasn't just a palace, it was a self-contained city with its own strict social rules. So that brings us to the big question. How did a place that was literally defined by being exclusive, by being forbidden, become one of the most visited heritage sites on the entire planet?
Well, after half a millennium as the unshakable heart of an empire, the end came, and it came fast. In 1912, the last emperor abdicated, and just like that, centuries of imperial rule were over. Then, in 1925, something truly unthinkable happened. The palace that was defined by being forbidden was reborn as the Palace Museum, and for the very first time in its history, those massive gates were thrown open to everybody. Today, it hosts over 14 million visitors every single year. Just think about that. A place that once forbade the entry of commoners now welcomes the entire world, giving us this direct window into the grandeur and complexity of China's imperial past.
And that really brings us to our final thought here. For everything we know about its history and its architecture, the Forbidden City still holds on to its secrets. It's this silent witness to 500 years of human drama. And it just leaves you wondering, if these ancient walls could finally speak, what stories would they choose to tell?